Hi, I'm Kristen.
I'm Allie Thompson.
Hi, I'm Huron, and we are small group instruction. So during this video, we will be talking about the differences between whole group instruction and small group instruction. And to start off, we have a short video that explains a little bit about what we're going to discuss in this lesson.
Welcome to our professional development channel. Our goal is to support teachers to improve instructional practices. After all, the teaching profession makes every other profession possible. This video is going to talk about small group instruction. This is one of the best ways to differentiate in the classroom. Okay, let's get started. The very best piece of advice I can give you in the beginning is to make sure you're really well prepared and organized. That will set you and your students up for success. And also take the time to train the students. It is not wasted time. If you really train the students, then all the lessons for the rest of the year will go really, really well. Prepare, prepare, prepare. Make sure you have all the materials you need for your small group instruction. Also be very clear on the content, because nothing will make a class fall apart faster than if the teacher is kind of bumbling up there and disorganized about what he or she is doing. Make sure you know the directions and how are you going to present the directions to the students. What are the noise levels that are acceptable, because one group may have to be absolutely silent, another group may be able to talk a little bit. Student movement, prepare and organize this so that they're not crashing into each other, so it's well timed and organized. The room arrangement needs to facilitate whatever you're doing. How will the teacher assistance be given to the students? And how will you monitor the students? All of them will not be with you all the time, so how will you hold them accountable? Seating charts are key to establishing a good learning environment. You want to make sure the arrangement is based on the goals of the lesson. All students need to be able to see the teaching focal point. Don't set up chairs in such a way that some students have their backs squarely to the front of the room. You want to eliminate any egress issues. You want to make sure traffic flow is seamless. You want to avoid distractions. I think this is pretty obvious. You don't want to set up a table where all the students are looking out the window. And if you'll change your seating chart on a regular basis, your students won't look like the students depicted here. Okay, let's get started. How do we manage our groups? The very first step, and you must take the time to really establish classroom management and to have an effective learning environment. Then you're going to assess your students and establish your groups. You really need to know what you're going to teach and plan your lessons to mastery. This is a great opportunity with your teacher group to really have some very explicit, directed instruction. You can look into the eyes of every one of those students, because you're going to have a small group in front of you, so you want to make sure this is really an effective lesson. You also need to create effective and meaningful activities for the independent groups. You need to make sure that the expectations are communicated to the students and that you build in accountability when they're in their independent groups. Okay, so the teacher chooses the groups. After you've done your assessment, you put together the groups. You don't let the students go sit with whomever they wish to sit with. The non-teacher group needs self-directed work that is both challenging and engaging, and this is the challenge for you. You want to have them with activities that they can do on their own without your assistance, but yet still challenging and engaging, not just busy work. The teacher group is uninterrupted, so you train the students that are in the independent group. You say, you can't talk to me. It's as if you're in a different classroom. It's as if you're someplace else and I'm not even physically here. You have to self-help and take care of yourself and be silent. And you let them know that there's going to be a time when they're in your group and they're going to get 100% of your attention. The best way to make this happen really well is to take the time to teach the students the routines and procedures. Also, be very consistent in your transitions. When you're changing from group to group, have it a timed change, have it organized. Everybody gets up and goes to the right, or everybody goes down the rows and up the rows, however you want to arrange it, but it's very consistent and it's very well organized and it's well articulated. And as limited movement as possible, because nothing makes things fall apart than if students are bumping into each other. You want to make sure that the independent group is meaningful as well as the teacher group. So you really want to train them to self-help and to really persevere in what they're doing and not have to always ask you for your help. You also want to make sure there's accountable activities so that you know what they're doing and you know that they're really doing something that is worthwhile. So you want meaningful review work, computer work that can be tracked, partner and group work, independent studies. These are all good ideas. Here's a little chart I put together to kind of help you. Sometimes people say to me, oh, I don't really know what to do to make them accountable. So I won't read the whole chart to you. You can print it out. Silent sustained reading, you want to have some kind of worksheets. There's a lot of computer programs out there that will track what they're doing and even give you little reports. A really cool idea is what I call a written dialogue, and you can have the students work in pairs and you can give them some kind of prompt or some kind of problem that they have to work out, and instead of discussing it out loud, they discuss it by sending each other notes. So it's sanctioned note writing, so the students really love that. Let's recap. First, you're going to prepare and organize really, really well so that you can set yourself and the students up for success. I encourage you to start small. This is not something you're going to do every single day. And in the beginning, you may want to just do 2 groups, half and half, so that you can teach the students how to be silent and how to transition. You're going to take the time to train the students. This is very important. Train the students and set the expectations so they know what's expected of them. And you want to build in accountability because you want all the groups to be meaningful, not just the teacher group.
So Allison's going to talk a little bit about teacher preparation, the materials, and student expectations. Then I'll be talking a little bit about the comparison and contrasting of whole group instruction versus small group instruction. And then Kristen's going to talk about student groups and academic readiness. And then we will close up with some questions.
So teacher preparation. Teachers are responsible for selecting the small group members. They need to ensure that the work is challenging and engaging. They require the children to know the routines and procedures during small group time. You want to make sure you have all materials needed and be clear about the course content. Materials needed for this is just a smartboard, laptop, and our worksheets for the end for the questions. A student's expectation is the students need to use inside voices and maintain their noise levels, work smart with each other, know the routine and procedures, and fully understand instructions so there's no confusion.
So to give a little background, whole group instruction is mainly teacher focused with all of the students sitting at their desks or their seats, being prepared to learn probably the beginning or the opening of a theme or particular unit. And this is effective for giving an overview or background of what students will be learning during a certain lesson plan or lesson unit. The small group instruction, on the other hand, is more content based. So the students are grouped in 2 to 4 people per group, and they can be grouped on skill level based on their literacy skills or mathematics skills or wherever they might need more assistance. And then the teacher can determine what the extra work that they need to do in order to better learn parts of a lesson that they might be struggling with. So to show the contrast and to compare small group and whole group, we have a little video that we're going to present, and that will be played for you here.
Way back when, students would go to school and sit in rows for the entire day, listening to the teacher talk on and on about different subjects. During this time, students were responsible for sitting still, listening, and taking notes to learn. However, we have come a long way in our understanding of how students learn, thankfully. These days, teachers are taught to use a variety of grouping strategies to help facilitate student learning. The 2 main groups you'll find in a classroom are whole class, in which the teacher teaches a topic to the whole class or students have a discussion as a whole group, or small group, in which students work with each other or the teacher in smaller groups. This lesson will explain when each of these grouping strategies is appropriate to use and detail some example activities for each type of group. Those classrooms mentioned in the introduction were doing some stuff right, obviously. The idea of teaching to the whole class is still an important one. However, attempting to do so for the entire school day will most likely result in tears and frustration, and not just from the students. Whole class instruction is best used in two broad situations: introducing a new concept or topic and facilitating a classroom discussion. Small group instruction is largely preferred for most of the school day, but sometimes you need to have your students all focused on one person or thing. For example, if your students had never heard the word verb before, you wouldn't put them into a group where they had to work together to find verbs in a piece of text. You would first need to introduce the concept to the whole class, either through direct instruction, a video, or another form of media. One area where whole class instruction is especially useful is in modeling a new concept or procedure. Take, for example, during writing instruction. This week, your students are going to learn how to write a friendly letter. However, they have never before seen, read, maybe, or written a friendly letter. Through whole class instruction, you can model a friendly letter so your students can spend some time practicing independently or in small groups. Facilitating class discussions is done through whole class instruction, at least for the first couple times students are engaging in the process. It's important to use whole class instruction for discussions because you, as the teacher, need to make sure students understand the topic and are following the guidelines for a productive conversation. Perhaps after the students have had some practice, they can run the discussion themselves or even have smaller discussions in groups. In an effective, productive learning environment, small group instruction is where the meat of learning is done. Small groups can be used for a variety of purposes and activities and can be divided into three subtypes. These are teacher-led small groups, student-led small groups, and independent small groups, which sounds like an oxymoron, but isn't, I promise. The first type of small group instruction, teacher-led, is exactly what it sounds like. This is a small group setting in which you can focus on a particular skill with a small amount of students, giving each student more individualized, differentiated instruction. An example of this would be to work on a specific reading comprehension skill in a small group before students practice that skill independently. Student-led small groups are likely where most of the intellectual heavy lifting will occur. In these groups, students work together to explore a concept or produce a piece of work. They do this with minimal teacher involvement, as this is when students are putting the skills you taught them into practice. For example, a student-led small group could focus on a key question that students can only answer using a variety of strategies and texts. Independent small groups are small groups in which students are working independently on the same task. See, I promised it wasn't an oxymoron. These groups are used to help students practice skills independently. For example, students could read a short book and answer questions pertaining to a specific comprehension skill being taught that week. Now that you got through the explanations of all the different types of small group instruction, you get to find out the most exciting thing about them. All of these small group activities can and should be happening at the same time. By having a classroom where students are working together, independently, or with you in small groups, you are more likely to have your students intellectually engaged for a long period of time. Go you! Now that you know when to use whole class or small group instruction, you can begin to think about how they will fit into your instructional time. It is always advisable to have students moving from different groups and activities throughout the day. For example, you might start as a whole group in the beginning of a class period, transition to some small group work, rejoin as a whole class, and then work on an independent activity. Whole class and small group instruction are the bread and butter of your instructional time. By knowing when you should have the whole class focused on one activity, whole class instruction, or when to break students into groups to work on different things, small group instruction, you can create a variety of engaging activities that will intellectually engage your students throughout the day.
Student groups. The small groups are basically for children that need, like she said, they're based 2 to 4 people or children, and they're put together for their skill levels, and the teacher is able to work one-on-one with them and each of them individually to help them better learn this material that they need the extra help in. Pairing the children together with their different skill levels they will actually be able to help each other. Because maybe the child might not know 100% what's going on, but they understand it a little bit, and the other student might not understand it at all, and they are able to work with that child and help them learn it and better understand it.
Hi, now we are going to be showing you an example of small group instruction, where here I'll be playing the teacher and Kristen and I will be portraying the students.
Okay. Hey girls, so today we're going to talk about this book here, and can you both point to the cover versus the title page? Right, so this is the cover, and where's the title page? Where would the title page be? Good, right, Allie. So, okay, by looking at the cover, what do you think the book might be about?
About a baby.
A baby. There is a bathroom there. Maybe he's wanting to go to the bathroom. And can you recognize any of the words on the front? Any words that we've covered so far this year?
Love.
Love. We have talked about love. Yep. So the book is called Love You Forever. Okay. Can you say love you forever and point?
Love you forever.
Good job. And it is written by Robert Munsch, and it's illustrated by Sheila McGraw. And what does an illustrator do again?
Draw.
Draw the pictures.
Draw the pictures, right? Okay. And what's another name? If it says written by, what does that mean? Who is that? What is that called again?
The author.
The author is the one that writes the book, right?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so we're going to open to the first page. And I'm going to read you some of the book. But while I read, I want you to remember that those are the sight words that we've been working on. So if you hear any of those sight words, remember those, because later we'll talk about which ones we heard while I read it to you. Sound good?
Yes.
Okay. Love you forever. Alright, are we on the same page? So I want you to follow along as best as you can, okay? A mother held her new baby and very slowly rocked him back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And while she held him, she sang, "I'll love you forever, I'll like you for always, as long as I'm living, my baby you'll be." The baby grew, he grew, and he grew, and he grew. He grew until he was 2 years old, and he ran all around the house. He pulled all the books off the shelves. He pulled all the food out of the refrigerator, and he took his mother's watch and flushed it down the toilet. Sometimes his mother would say, "This kid is driving me crazy." But at nighttime, when that 2-year-old was quiet, she opened the door to his room, crawled across the floor, looked up over the side of his bed, and if he was really asleep, she picked him up and rocked him back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. While she rocked him, she sang, "I'll love you forever, I'll like you for always, as long as I'm living, my baby you'll be." The little boy grew. He grew and he grew and he grew. He grew until he was 9 years old, and he never wanted to come in for dinner. He never wanted to take a bath, and when Grandma visited, he always said bad words. Sometimes his mother wanted to sell him to the zoo. Would that be silly if his mother really sold him to the zoo? I think that'd be
Yes.
silly. So, Kristen, do you remember any of the sight words that you heard from the first part of the book that we just read?
Yes. Door.
Door, that's right. And Allie, how about you? Do you remember any of the sight words that we read so far?
Books.
Books, that's right.
And
Go
Zoo.
on. Zoo, right. So what do book, store, and zoo all have in their words?
Oh.
Two.
O's.
How many?
Two.
O's? 2 O's, right. So that's why we're focusing on our sight words this week, is the double O sound, right? So room and door both have 2 O's, but they sound a little different when you say them, right? Okay. So tomorrow when we get back together, we'll read a little bit more of the book. We'll have a few more sight words to look at, and we'll see which other ones we can recognize as we go through the book. and we will, maybe tomorrow we'll have both of you try to read a couple of the sentences on some of the pages, since I read some of it already. Does that sound good?
Yes.
Okay, good job today, girls.
Thank you.
Thanks. What is the goal of the intended lesson?
It's important to remember that there should always be a goal in mind when you're teaching small groups. There should always be some sort of content knowledge or skill level that a group of students is working towards, so that they have something that they are working on mastering within their small group time.
Define small group instruction and why is it important?
Small group instruction is with a group of 2 to 4 students working with the teacher, and it's important to work one-on-one with students and make sure you're getting to work on their levels.
I think it just helps them, it gives them that one-on-one time that they really deserve. Sometimes information can get lost in whole group instruction, especially if a particular student is not really ready for that part of the lesson yet. So small group instruction allows the teacher to have that individualized time with those students to really drill down the necessary mechanics that they need to know before they can move on to the next part of the lesson.
How can you implement small group in your classroom?
I think it's important to have very fluid small groups, so it's not always the same children every time. Your reading small groups may be different from your math small groups, and then those also might be different from your science small groups. One of the things that I really like about classrooms that I've been in is teachers just have popsicle sticks with their children's names written on them, and then they choose 2 to 3 names for each group, and that just ensures that groups are constantly changing and children have the ability to work with different children so that all the skill levels are kind of represented within the small groups.
In small group, what do you find most difficult? For me, the most difficult part I find is having 4 children at one table while the other 8 or 9 children are running around the classroom playing and engaging in other activities, because I want to be focused on these 4, but I also have to watch my whole classroom and make sure that everyone else is behaving appropriately and following the rules.
So we hope that you have learned a little bit about small group instruction through our presentation. There will be a slide with some questions at the end that you can think about once you've watched this video. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.